And then you will be familiar, I think, maybe with the comments that the NATO Secretary General made today. Are you familiar with them?
Which
At
one
one point, he
specifically?
said that that NATO has tried for the past 20 years to work with Russia, but they have broken the rules and eroded trust. I'm wondering if that was Rasmussen. Does the United States, does the administration agree with that?
I think we would certainly agree with that. We've said very clearly that what they have done in Ukraine is in violation of international law. They have broken the rules, and that it has eroded trust. When they're sending tanks and RPGs over a border into a sovereign state, I don't know how it could do anything but, quite frankly.
Okay, but he seemed to be talking about the last 2 decades, that they've been doing this the entire time. Are you just agreeing with him over in the course of the just in terms of Georgia and Ukraine?
Recently. I'm talking about recently.
Okay.
Look, more broadly speaking, I guess I can speak for this administration. It has been a complicated relationship. There have been times we've been able to work together, whether it's on New START, whether it's on the resupply lines into Afghanistan, other issues, Iran being one, the nuclear issue, but there have been places where it's been much more challenging.
Well, I'm wondering if you think it is, if you agree with what the Secretary General said.
And I didn't see them in context, so I don't want to.
Right. Well, I mean, there was pretty much a context. It was in context about talking about Ukraine and talking about the strained relations between NATO specifically and
Russia over Ukraine.
Well, not just over Ukraine. I mean, he's talking about 20 years, so I assume he's talking about Georgia as well. I'm assuming he's talking about
we're all aware of the tough history here.
But what I'm wondering is if you agree with that, if you can't also see Russian complaints that NATO may have acted in the same way, would you reject that?
Reject out of hand, absolutely. What the difference here is that any activity we've done to shore up our NATO partners, any actions we've taken, have been to defend our partners and to defend sovereign countries. What Russia did was very different. Invading neighboring countries, sovereign states, there's just not an equivalence
here. But
here.
from their perspective, going back many years, the NATO and the United States in particular, as the main ally in NATO, has done equally, well, maybe not equally, but has done provocative things, at least provocative to them. It's expanded into their backyard.
We've been very clear that expansion is not intended at all to be a provocative step.
Right.
So we would disagree with their characterization.
But just because you say so doesn't mean that that's the way they see it, right? And so, I mean, if you're trying to find a common understanding here, I'm not sure, but you say you're trying to find a common understanding and to cooperate with them, but at the same time, you completely reject out of hand all of their arguments that are very similar to what the NATO Secretary General said about them.
Well, no, I think they're drastically different situations, but that's why, as we've expanded NATO, we've talked to the Russians about it. Right. When we've talked about other issues like missile defense, we have talked to them about it. We know their position, but we have consistently tried to make it very clear to them that it's not directed at them.
Yeah, but see, every time you've done a NATO expansion or done a missile defense, they've said, no, don't do it, it's a bad idea. And you say, well,
right,
sorry.
We're not going to not do things that are in our
us,
national security interest because the Russians don't like them, but we do think it's important to make clear to them what our intentions are. And that's very different. Talking about missile defense is very different than invading a sovereign country.
Okay, I'm not going to argue.
Right. So I think if they see them equally in some way, that's just delusional.
So everything that you say and do is right, and everything that they say and do is wrong?
I'm saying everything we do in terms of NATO reinforcement and reassurance, including missile defense, we make very clear to them transparently is not aimed at being provocative at Russia.
Right. I understand that you tell them that, but they clearly
whether or not they choose to believe that is their decision. I think the world can see.
So it's their fault then.
Well, I think the world can see the blatant differences between missile defense designed to not confront Russia and invading a sovereign country.
Can you think of one time where you have gone to the Russians and said, okay, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and you have actually taken their concerns on board?
Well, we certainly take their concerns on board and have discussions with them. That doesn't mean we're going to change. Doesn't mean we're going to change what we think is in our national security interest.
Okay, so your argument is that the United States and NATO do what is in the national interests of its members and NATO's interests, and what Russia does that they think is in their interest that what NATO does is good, and that what Russia does
No,
in
what
pursuit
NATO
of what
does
it
to
thinks,
protect its own sovereign territory is in our
Right.
interest. What Russia has done is invade another sovereign territory.
Okay, you
Not
don't-
sure how that could be in Russia's interest.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Good? Thank